We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. Trump says Gaza ceasefire not in danger after Israel launches airstrikes on Gaza. Hurricane Melissa makes landfall in Jamaica, causes extensive damage, heads towards Cuba. North Korea test fires cruise missiles ahead of Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea. Rio de Janeiro police launches their biggest ever raids on the city's drug traffickers, leaves at least 64 dead. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the Maritime Leaders Conclave, chairs Global Maritime CEO Forum in Mumbai. And on to the details now. U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said nothing would jeopardize ceasefire in Gaza, but added Israel should hit back if its soldiers were killed. The statement comes after Israeli planes launched strikes in Gaza on Tuesday. This is the latest test of the fragile deal brokered by Donald Trump. In Gaza City, Israeli strike that killed several people hit a residential building near Shifa Hospital, the largest operational hospital in northern Gaza. 2 people were wounded in an attack on a tent in Zawaida in the central Gaza Strip. A statement from Israel said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered powerful strikes on Gaza. Defense Minister Israel Katz accused Hamas of carrying out an attack against Israeli forces in an area of the enclave that is under Israeli control. Both the sides have accused each other of ceasefire violations. The issue flared up when Netanyahu said Hamas had violated the ceasefire by turning over some wrong remains in a process of returning the bodies of hostages to Israel. Israeli forensics said the remains handed over on Monday belonged to Ofir Zarfati, an Israeli killed during Hamas' October 7, 2023 attack. Zarfati's remains had already been partially retrieved by Israeli troops during the conflict.
Received the remains of a deceased hostage from Gaza, and following the identification process, it was determined the partial remains belonged to Ofir Zarfati, a 27-year-old who was murdered in Hamas captivity after being kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival. The IDF rescued his body from Gaza in November of 2023, where he was later buried in Israel by his family. In March of 2024, additional remains of Ofir were returned to Israel for burial.
Well, under the ceasefire terms, Hamas released all living hostages in return for nearly 2,000 Palestinian convicts and wartime detainees, while Israel pulled back its troops and halted its offensive. The U.S.-backed ceasefire agreement went into effect on October 10th, halting 2 years of conflict triggered by deadly Hamas-led attacks on Israel on October 7th, 2023. And moving on, Hurricane Melissa has again strengthened to a Category 4 storm as it picked up speed over the Caribbean Sea and approaches eastern Cuba. The storm took hours to cross over Jamaica, a passage over land that diminished its winds, dropping down to a Category 3 from the maximum level 5 before ramping back up to Category 4. Now here's more in this report. Hurricane Melissa slowly cut a soaking and destructive path across Jamaica on Tuesday after making landfall as one of the strongest Category 5 storms on record. The hours-long overland passage sapped some of the storm's strength, dropping it to a Category 4 by the time it began moving off Jamaica's north coast in the afternoon. The scale of Melissa's damage in Jamaica wasn't yet clear, as a comprehensive assessment could take days and much of the island was still without power, with communications network badly disrupted. Melissa has dumped significant amounts of rain throughout the Caribbean in recent days, with more to come. In Jamaica, forecasters expect up to another 12 inches in some areas, on top of what had already fallen. Jamaica's healthcare system is facing one of the most severe crises in recent memory after Hurricane Melissa battered the island's hospitals and clinics. Hurricane Melissa is forecast to hit Cuba on Wednesday. The storm is poised to first reach the island's southeast corner. Cuban authorities moved more than 500,000 people to higher ground in the Bahamas. Next, in Melissa's path to the northeast, the government ordered evacuations of residents in southern portions. Farther to the east, the island shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic had faced days of torrential downpours, leading to at least 4 deaths. Hurricane Melissa is the strongest storm on record to smash into the island nation, hitting land with maximum wind speeds, even more potent than most of recent history's most brutal storms, including 2005's Katrina, which ravaged the U.S. city of New Orleans. Bureau Report, DD India. Well, moving on to India, where severe cyclonic storm Montha weakened into a cyclonic storm over coastal Andhra Pradesh. The cyclone is likely to move nearly northwestwards across coastal Andhra Pradesh and maintain its intensity of cyclonic storm during the next 6 hours and later weaken further into a deep depression. However, gusty winds and moderate rainfall are likely to occur in southern districts of Odisha, particularly in areas bordering Andhra Pradesh. Meanwhile, as per the reports from our correspondents, no significant impact of the cyclone has been observed so far. Now, the system monitored continuously by Doppler weather radar at Machilipatnam and Vishakhapatnam. In addition to coastal observatories, the cyclone will likely move nearly northeastwards across East Central Arabian Sea for the next 36 hours. Cyclone Montha made landfall on Tuesday, crossing the Andhra Pradesh coast. Continuous rainfall have lashed Odisha and Andhra Pradesh due to the impact of Cyclone Montha. Patrapur received the highest rainfall of more than 117 millimeters. Due to the constant rainfall, about 5,200 people have been evacuated in the district. Chief Minister of Odisha also reviewed a cyclone situation at State Control Room to review the arising situations. And DD India's correspondent joins us, Ravi Shankar from Guntur, Andhra Pradesh. Well, Ravi, what damage has been caused in terms of the crop area and the loss of life so far? In fact, how is the weather right now?
Yeah, the cyclone Montha, its landfall took place from 7 p.m. of yesterday, and it concluded by 2:30 midnight in yesterday. And tomorrow morning, the state is taking its own rehabilitation and rescue activities allowed the state, especially in the state. At about 8 districts, they got severely damaged because of this Montha cyclone. And state government, it has made all the arrangements for 75,000 people who have been evacuated from the low-lying areas as well as cyclone-affected areas. These 75,000 people, they have been shifted to at about 2,200 rehabilitation camps, and there the government arranged all the food, water, and other health needs also. And regarding crop loss, it has to be enumerated by the government, and the process will start hopefully by tomorrow morning. It will take 2 to 3 days, and after that, the state government will submit the crop loss details to central government for further necessary help.
All right. Also, Ravi, how much rainfall has been recorded there due to the landfall? Also, tell us the impact of the cyclone. We can see a lot of things battered behind you. How has been the impact of the cyclone so far?
The maximum rainfall that was recorded is in Vizag district, followed by Kakinada district, because of the landfall, it took place in Kakinada district only, in between Kakinada and Yanamo places. And after that, since morning, there is heavy rain in only 8 districts of Andhra Pradesh, which has been declared a red alert in those districts. And later on, from 2 to 3 p.m. onwards, there will not be that much rain as per the IMA. And moderate rain will be there in the other 6 districts of Andhra Pradesh, which are absolutely in the coastal line.
All right, Ravi, thank you so much for all those details from there. And still to come on DD India News App. Colombian President Petro accuses US of using anti-drug strikes as cover for invasion oil control. NASA's X-59 jet completes historic supersonic test, paving way for faster, low-noise air travel. And 10 European tourists and Kenyan pilot killed in light aircraft crash in Kenya. Investigations underway.
Goa, an adventure paradise like none other. From lush forests to rugged hills, from pristine ocean beach stretches to stunning lakes, there is something to explore in every corner of the state. And some adventures are wilder than others. Watch Postcards from Goa on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Moving on, US President Donald Trump is visiting South Korea in the final leg of his Asia trip, with high-stakes meetings expected with Chinese President Xi Jinping and South Korea's Lee Jae-myung. Now, Trump is currently delivering keynote remarks at the APEC CEO luncheon, and he will later participate in a US APEC leaders working dinner. He will also meet with Lee in Gyeongju ahead of the APEC summit, during which the unresolved trade agreement between both sides will be on top of the agenda. The two allies announced a deal in August under which South Korea would avoid the worst of the tariffs by agreeing to pump $350 billion of new investments into the United States. But talks over the structure of those investments have been deadlocked, and officials from both the sides have said Trump and Lee are unlikely to finalize an agreement. Trump has also pressed allies like South Korea to pay more for defense, and South Korea has sought reforms to US immigration laws to allow for more workers to build factories after a raid on a Hyundai motor. Meanwhile, North Korea has test-launched sea-to-surface cruise missiles off its western coast a day before US President Donald Trump begins a visit to South Korea. Now, according to the Korean Central News Agency, the missiles were fired vertically from the Yellow Sea and flew for more than 2 hours. The tests were overseen not by leader Kim Jong-un but by senior military official Park Jong-chon. His absence follows a similar omission in last week's report on the test firing of several hypersonic missiles. The US president has expressed an openness to meeting with Kim on the sidelines while he visits South Korea, while Pyongyang has not publicly responded to Trump's offers. Well, at least 64 people died in Rio de Janeiro's most deadly police operation ever, which targeted a major gang days before the city host global events COP30. Now, fierce clashes erupted when about 2,500 heavily armed officers, backed by armored vehicles, helicopters and drones, took part in the operation targeting Brazil's main drug trafficking gang in northern Rio. Police have often conducted large-scale operations against criminal groups ahead of major events in Rio, which hosted the 2016 Olympics, the 2024 G20 Summit and the BRICS Summit in July. But this was by far one of the deadliest. Now, next week, Rio will host the C40 Global Summit of Mayors tackling climate change and Prince William's Earthshot Prize. Also, the U.S. Senate has voted 52-48 to terminate President Donald Trump's tariffs against Brazil, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats in rare bipartisan support. Now, the measure challenges Trump's national emergency declaration issued after Brazil prosecuted ex-President Jair Bolsonaro for an alleged coup attempt. But the victory may be short-lived. House Republicans are expected to shelve the bill, blocking its progress. Senate Democrats slammed Trump's tariff policy, accusing it of driving up the cost of food, clothing and energy for American families. And Colombian President Gustavo Petro accused the United States of using its military campaign against drug trafficking as a pretext for invasion. Now, speaking during an official visit to Saudi Arabia, Petro criticized U.S. attacks on vessels allegedly transporting cocaine, saying recent strikes in the Caribbean and Pacific appear aimed at seizing control of Latin American oil rather than combating narcotics.
There is no need to fire missiles. It's absolutely ineffective. And this action doesn't seem to be really aimed at seizing cocaine, but rather at an invasion, which is also absurdly illegal and has more of an objective oil than defending American society from illicit drugs.
Well, the remarks came as U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced on Tuesday that a series of strikes against suspected drug vessels in the Eastern Pacific killed 14 alleged traffickers and left one survivor. The latest operation in President Donald Trump's counter-drug campaign. The Pacific strikes are part of a broader U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean that includes guided missile destroyers, F-35 fighter jets, a nuclear submarine, and thousands of troops. The Ford Carrier Strike Group is expected to reach the Caribbean in the coming weeks. At least 10 strikes have been conducted in the Caribbean and Pacific since early September, raising tensions with Venezuela and Colombia. Now, Trump has also authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations in Venezuela. And Republican and Democratic leaders in Congress continue to trade barbs and accusations while remaining far from breaking a shutdown impasse that has now stretched to 4 weeks. A coalition of Democratic-led states filed a lawsuit on Tuesday to stop President Donald Trump's administration from suspending food aid benefits starting on November 1st amid the ongoing U.S. government shutdown. Attorney General and governors from 25 states and the District of Columbia filed the lawsuit in Boston federal court after the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it would not use $6 billion in contingency funds to pay for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, also known as food stamps. Democrats said they will not vote to resume federal funding unless Congress also addresses subsidies for 24 million Americans due to expire at the end of the calendar year. While Republicans said Congress first must pass a temporary spending bill that would allow the government to reopen. Also, a U.S. judge on Tuesday has tightened oversight of federal agents involved in President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown in Chicago after video showed Border Patrol official Gregory Bovino throwing a tear gas canister at the protesters. Judge Sarah Ellis sharply rebuked Bovino, ordering him to appear in the court daily and to wear a body camera himself. Now, the footage linked to Trump's Operation Midway Blitz has sparked outrage and lawsuits accusing federal agents of excessive force and civil rights violations. Ellis demanded detailed reports and body cam videos on all uses of force against protesters and bystanders. The Chicago crackdown, marked by tear gas and violent confrontations, has ignited widespread protest and legal challenges against Trump's aggressive immigration policies. And NASA's X-59 supersonic jet completed its first test flight over the Southern California desert on Tuesday, marking a major milestone in aviation. Now, the experimental aircraft, developed with Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works in Palmdale, aims to break the sound barrier quietly, reducing the traditional sonic boom to a soft sonic thump. Measuring nearly 100 feet long, the single-engine jet climbed smoothly after takeoff and headed towards Edward Air Force Base, accompanied by a NASA chase plane. Built to reach Mach 1.4 at 55,000 feet, the X-59's design could pave the way for quiet, faster commercial flights over populated areas. NASA says this initial flight tested basic systems and airworthiness, launching a new era of low-noise supersonic travel. And Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov has held talks in Moscow with his Syrian counterpart Murhaf Abu Qasra. During the negotiation, the two sides discussed the practical implementation of promising areas of bilateral cooperation. In mid-October, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara visited Moscow and met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, pledging to honor all previously signed agreements between the two countries, a commitment seen as a signal that Russia's two main military bases in Syria remain secure. Well, in Kenya, 8 Hungarian and 2 German tourists were killed along with a Kenyan pilot when a light aircraft crashed on Tuesday. The aviation authorities said the plane was traveling from the resort town of Diani on the Indian Ocean coast to Kenya's Masai Mara Reserve when it crashed. Smoke rose from the wreckage of the plane, which came down in a forested area in Kwale County in Kenya's southeast. Kenya's government said investigators had been sent to find out what had happened. The airline Mombasa Air Safari said it was cooperating with the investigations. Well, Pakistan has said that the negotiations for a lasting truce with Afghanistan had failed to bring about a workable solution. The Istanbul talks aim to secure peace after deadliest border clashes in years, which erupted following explosions in Kabul on October 9th that the Taliban authorities blamed on Pakistan. Now, relations have soured over unverifiable accusations from Islamabad that Afghanistan harbors militant groups which stage attacks in Pakistan. Kabul has consistently denied and rejected allegations as baseless. Also, hundreds of Portuguese university students in Lisbon marched through a rain on Tuesday, rallying outside the parliament to oppose the government's new budget, which includes an increase in university fees. Now, the protesters called for the complete removal of tuition fees, warning that higher cost could force many students to abandon their studies. They also highlighted the severe housing crisis, noting that Lisbon's rent prices are among the highest in Europe, leaving many without affordable accommodation. Despite the demonstrations, Portugal's parliament approved the 2026 budget bill in its first reading, with the centre-right minority government securing passage through the abstention of the opposition Socialist Party. And Venezuela's National Assembly declared Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamla Prasad Bisesar persona non grata following Caracas's suspension of a wide-ranging energy pact with its neighbor after President Nicolas Maduro criticized what he called its pro-US stance amid ongoing military escalation in the region. Well, on Monday, Maduro suspended energy and development cooperation with Trinidad and Tobago. The move would likely include revoking the license to develop the massive Dragon natural gas field, among other projects. On Sunday, a U.S. warship docked in Trinidad 2 days after Washington announced the deployment of an aircraft carrier group to Latin America. As Trinidad grapples with declining gas reserves and production, former PM Keith Rowley favored energy diplomacy with Venezuela and resisted U.S. sanctions pressure. While tensions are rising between Trinidad and Tobago with Venezuela, the island nation is now weighing a mass deportation of undocumented migrants amid a diplomatic rift with Caracas. Now, Trinidad and Tobago's Homeland Security Minister has ordered a halt to the release of undocumented migrants currently in detention, as authorities are considering a large-scale deportation exercise targeting mostly Venezuelan nationals. This comes as relations between the two nations strain over U.S. military activities in the Caribbean, deepening a diplomatic standoff. And climate change is ravaging the health of people around the world, and policy failures are leading to millions of avoidable deaths each year. The Lancet Countdown has come up with its major annual study tracking the health impacts of climate change. It says opportunities for a just climate transition were still on the table but remained largely untapped. Let's listen to the details. Climate change is ravaging human health worldwide, with millions of avoidable deaths each year. The Lancet Countdown report calls for urgent action ahead of the COP30 climate talks in Brazil, including investments in zero carbon energy and climate resilient infrastructure. Rising temperatures and toxic fumes from wildfires are taking a deadly toll. The report put figures on some of the most deadly consequences. 546,000 people died each year between 2012 and 2021 because of exposure to heat, a massive increase on figures from the 1990s, and toxic fumes from wildfires killed a record 154,000 last year. Global temperatures are now hitting record highs, surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre industrial levels, amplifying heat waves, droughts, and extreme weather. Despite the climate crisis, governments spent nearly $1 trillion subsidizing fossil fuels last year. It also criticizes some world leaders and corporations for backsliding on climate commitments, while praising local communities for leadership efforts.
Despite the fact that we're seeing such a falling engagement from political leaders, what we're also seeing is that sometimes it is the local governments that are still taking the lead, and the ones that are most in contact with local communities that are holding the efforts for climate action to be taken forward. And we're seeing things like extreme weather events becoming more frequent and more deadly. We have new data this year showing that we had more than 150,000 deaths related to wildfire exposure per year, wildfire smoke exposure per year. So the death toll of climate change is rapidly growing, and that is particularly concerning.
Experts say reversing harmful policies and investing in sustainable solutions is crucial to protect human health and survival. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Tiffaine Auzerre, daughter of France's First Lady Brigitte Macron, gave evidence on Tuesday in cyberbullying trial. 10 people are on trial over false claims that her mother is a transgender woman. Auzerre told the court that she had witnessed the serious effect the rumors had on her mother's health. If convicted, the co-accused face up to 2 years in prison. To mark the 100 days before the start of the 2026, members of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic squads participated in an event on Tuesday, turning on the lights at the Empire State Building. The colors, of course, were to be red, white and blue, the national colors of the United States. The Milano Cortina Games run from February 6 to February 22nd. A toilet cleaning tablet that also screens for early kidney disease signals has been shortlisted for the prestigious James Dyson Award Global Top 20, which will be announced on November 20th. Called Urify, the device is activated by flushing a toilet, which releases a reagent that detects urinary albumin, a marker associated with kidney disease, and provides an early warning to seek medical help. And still to come, DD India News Now. President Draupadi Murmu to take a Rafale fighter jet sortie at Ambala Air Base amid tight security today. Piyush Goyal's Brussels visit advances in their EU free trade talks, narrowing gaps towards balanced pact. And Delhi conducts first ever cloud seeding operations to tackle air pollution, records light rainfall.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Trump says Gaza ceasefire not in danger after Israel launches airstrikes on Gaza. Hurricane Melissa makes landfall in Jamaica, causes extensive damage, churning towards Cuba. North Korea test fires cruise missiles ahead of Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea. Rio de Janeiro police launches their biggest ever raids on the city's drug traffickers, leave at least 64 dead. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the Maritime Leaders Conclave, chair Global Maritime CEO Forum in Mumbai. Well, under the theme Uniting Oceans, One Maritime Vision, India Maritime Week 2025 is underway in Mumbai from 27th to 31st of October, hosted by the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways. IMW 2025 is said to be the world's largest maritime gathering, bringing together key stakeholders from across the global maritime ecosystem. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the Leaders Conclave and the Global Maritime CEO Forum during the event. Take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Mumbai on Wednesday to address the Maritime Leaders Conclave and chair the Global Maritime CEO Forum at the India Maritime Week 2025. The Global Maritime CEO Forum will bring together CEOs of global maritime companies, major investors, policymakers, innovators, and international partners to deliberate on the future of the global maritime ecosystem. The Netherlands Minister of Infrastructure and Water Management, Robert Tiemann, who will be part of the CEO Forum, spoke to DD India about strengthening bilateral cooperation between India and the Netherlands in maritime and water management.
Memorandum of understanding, different types of topics are on there. For example, the training of the maritime professionals, but also table topics like the water quality, topics like the maritime agenda to manufacture vessels.
The Prime Minister's presence reaffirms his vision for a progressive maritime transformation aligned with the Maritime Amritkal Vision 2047, with over 350 international speakers. India Maritime Week 2025 is said to be a hub of industry expertise and strategic dialogue. The event will witness the signing of more than 600 Memorandum of Understanding, amounting to investment commitments exceeding 10 lakh crore rupees. The 5-day event brings together over 1 lakh participants from 85 countries, including 500 exhibitors, 350 speakers, and 12 concurrent conferences and exhibitions. India Maritime Week 2025 showcases the country's maritime resurgence and its vision to transform the nation into a global maritime leader by 2047.
India Maritime Week brings together policy, community, technology and business under one roof, shaping blue economy's future. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's participation underscores his commitment to the vision of Maritime Amritkal Vision 2047. With camera person Kapil Maske, this is Shama Mishra for DD India, Mumbai.
And for more, DD India, Shama Mishra joins us from Mumbai on this. Well, Shama, over the past 11 years, India's maritime sector has seen significant growth, emphasizing self-reliance and the development of domestic capabilities. In this context, what role does India Maritime Week play in driving the nation's maritime transformation?
Well, Lipakshi, for starters, we understand that India is blessed with a huge coastal line of 7,500 kilometers, and for India, the maritime sector plays an important role for the trade and overall development. India also has this particular vision wherein we want to be a global maritime leader by 2047, and in the last edition of the India Maritime Week, we did see the unveiling of unveiling of the Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 2047. So when India becomes 100 years old after the independence, we want to be a Viksit Bharat, a developed nation, and we want to be a global maritime hub. And that is why all the countries who are having that coastal line, and all the states who are having the coastal shore or coastal kilometers are very important from this perspective of India Maritime Week. Now today Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he would be coming and he would be addressing various sessions, including the Leaders Forum and the CEO Forum and Leaders Summit. He'll also be visiting the exhibition stall at India Maritime Week. We understand that the Prime Minister's presence over here is obviously an underscore of the commitment where he wants the maritime sector to grow. And when we are talking about maritime sector, it's not just the trade, but because trade-wise, we know for the fact that the volume-wise, around 90% of the trade happens through the sea route, and by the value-wise, it is around 75%. But apart from that, we are also looking at digitalization, technology-driven trade, and other related allied ways. We are also looking at skill development. We are also looking at overall holistic development of this particular sector. So when we are talking about the maritime sector, it's not just the global ways we do trade, but it is also the way we are going to develop the inland waterways. We are going to develop the domestic routes, because recently Prime Minister, when he was here in Mumbai for inaugurating the Navi Mumbai airport, that was one airport which will be soon connected with the sea route. So one of a kind over there, and because of the fact that it will be connected through sea route, it definitely opens more doors for the maritime sector, and many countries can take note of this. While we are talking about countries, we understand that there are international speakers from more than 85 countries, and there are 500 exhibitors over here. Countries who are having MOUs are also huge. For example, on the first day, Netherlands, we did see with our shipping minister, Sarbanand Sonowal, they signed an MOU with India, and there'll be development of the skilled manpower. They will also be taking hydrogen from India. So hydrogen is produced in India, and countries like Netherlands cannot be doing it on their own. So India would be playing a huge role to supply that. Apart from that, the Netherlands have their technology and have their expertise in dredging. They will also be sharing their expertise with India. So this is one place where we will be sharing the best practices, and likewise with the other countries, including UAE, Japan, and so many other countries, India will be going forward to have more number of MOUs, more number of agreements, so that everyone can grow together in that direction, where we have, we have a transitional and a transformational maritime sector, and India wants definitely to become a global maritime leader by 2047.
Indeed, a very, very important conclave. Thank you so much, Shama, for all those details from there. And moving on, President Draupadi Murmu has arrived in Haryana's Ambala city, where she will take a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet in a short while from now. Well, the President received the Guard of Honor at the Ambala Air Force Station. She will shortly take a sortie in a Rafale aircraft. The Ambala Air Base is one of the crucial operational air bases of the Indian Air Force. On April 8, 2023, the President took a sortie in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Tezpur Air Force Station, Assam. In September 2020, the fourth generation and most advanced Rafale jets were inducted into the IAF at Ambala Air Base. The jets were also used during Operation Sindoor, the military operation carried by India against Pakistan following the Pahalgam terrorist attack. Now, former Presidents APJ Abdul Kalam and Pratibha Patil had undertaken sorties in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Air Force Station, Lohegaon near Pune. Let's take a look why the Rafale is a lethal threat to the enemies and a top choice for nations worldwide. Well, the Rafale is a twin-jet 4.5 generation fighter plane able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. Rafale is capable of air defense, ground attack, anti-ship and nuclear deterrence missions and can carry a wide range of air-to-air, air-to-ground and anti-ship armaments. The Meteor missile, Scalp cruise missile and Mika missile system present in the aircraft makes it important from security point of view. Rafale can fly at a speed of Mach 1.8 per hour and an altitude of 50,000 feet. This fighter aircraft can carry 9,500 kilograms of bombs and ammunition at a time. Rafale jets were used during Operation Sindoor, launched by India in response to the Pahalgam terror attack. Well, the Rafale is a twin-jet 4.5 generation fighter plane able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. Also, Rafale is capable of air defense and ground attack. And now let's take you to Haryana's Ambala Air Force Station, where President Draupadi Murmu is taking a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet. President Draupadi Murmu in Haryana's Ambala city, about to take a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet. Earlier, President received the Guard of Honor at the Ambala Air Force Station itself, and Ambala Air Base is one of the crucial operational air bases of the Indian Air Force. President Murmu will take a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet, and Rafale jets were used during Operation Sindoor, launched by India in response to the April 22nd dastardly Pahalgam terror attack. Former presidents APJ Abdul Kalam and Pratibha Badal had also undertaken sorties in Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Air Force Station Lohegaon near Pune in 2006 and 2009, respectively. In fact, on April 8, 2023, President Murmu, also the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces, became the third president and the second woman head of the state to take a sortie in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam. In fact, Rafale jets manufactured by the French Aerospace Major Dassault Aviation, Rafale fighter aircraft, were formally inducted in the Indian Air Force in September 2020 at the Air Force Station, Ambala itself. President Draupadi Murmu, right there up on your screens, the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces, about to take a sortie in the Rafale fighter jet. This will be President Murmu's second sortie in a combat aircraft, and on April 8, 2023, earlier she had taken a historic flight in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam, becoming the third president and the second woman president to undertake such a sortie. In fact, during an earlier flight in Sukhoi 30 MKI, President Murmu flew for about 30 minutes, covering the Brahmaputra and Tezpur valleys with a stunning view of the Himalayas before returning to the base. And the sortie was piloted by Group Captain Naveen Kumar, commanding officer of the 106th Squadron. That aircraft, the aircraft flew at an altitude of around 2 kilometers above the sea level and achieved a speed of approximately 800 kilometers per hour. In fact, the President herself had written that it was an exhilarating experience to fly at that time in the Sukhoi 30 MKI and expressed pride in India's expanding defense capabilities across land, air or sea. And she had also congratulated the Indian Air Force and the entire Tezpur team for organizing the sortie. Then also the President had taken a briefing on the operational capabilities of the aircraft and the Indian Air Force and expressed satisfaction on the operational preparedness of the Indian Air Force. Right up on your screens, President Murmu at the Ambala Air Force Station, all ready to take the sortie in Rafale. In fact, President sorties in fighter jets are a part of her efforts to engage with the armed forces as their supreme commander. Also in March 2023, the President had visited INS Vikrant, India's first indigenous aircraft carrier commissioned in 2022, and interacted with the officers and sailors on board of the indigenously built aircraft. President Draupadi Murmu in Haryana's Ambala city, all set to take the sortie in a Rafale fighter jet. Earlier, she received the Guard of Honor at the Ambala Air Force Station. And to tell you that Ambala Air Force Station is one of the most crucial operational air bases of the Indian Air Force. Also to tell you about Rafale, in September 2020, the fourth generation and most advanced Rafale jets were inducted into the IAF at Ambala Air Base itself. And Rafale is capable of air defense, ground attack, anti-ship and nuclear deterrence missions, and they can carry a wide range of air-to-air, air-to-ground and anti-ship armaments. The Rafale is a twin-jet, 4.5 generation fighter plane able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. Also, the Meteor missile, Scalp cruise missile and Mika missile system present in the aircraft make it very important from the security point of view. Rafale can fly at a speed of Mach 1.8 per hour and an altitude of 50,000 feet. I repeat, Rafale can fly at a speed of Mach 1.8 per hour and an altitude of 50,000 feet. Also, this fighter Rafale aircraft can carry 9,500 kilograms of bombs and ammunition at a time, and Rafale jets were used also during the Operation Sindoor launched by India in response to the Pahalgam terror attack. President Murmu right there up on your screen, set to undertake a sortie in a Rafale fighter aircraft, marking a significant moment in her engagement with India's war zone defense capabilities. It may be noted that earlier also, President undertook a sortie on the Sukhoi 30 fighter aircraft at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam. And the President right now will be flying in a two-seater variant of the French-made aircraft with an IF senior pilot managing the controls. Chief of Air Staff, Air Chief Marshal Amarpreet Singh, will also be present at the base along with the Chief of the IF's Western Command, Air Chief Air Marshal Jitendra Mishra, and the Rafale fighter jet was formally inducted into the IF in September 2020 with number 17, a squadron known as the Golden Arrows, stationed at Ambala, the Air Force's oldest operational base. President Draupadi Murmu at the Ambala Air Force Station will be taking a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet from the Ambala Air Force Base in Haryana, and India has used these jets to launch attacks on terrorist hideouts in Pakistan as part of the Operation Sindoor also. In fact, earlier, former presidents Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and Pratibha Patil had both taken sorties in the fighter jets, and Kalam and Patil undertook sorties in a Sukhoi 30 MKI itself. President Murmu herself had taken the sortie earlier in 2023 in April, making her the third president of India to do so. The Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, President Draupadi Murmu, all set to take the sortie in an Indian Air Force combat fighter today at the Ambala Air Base. She will be the first president to fly in IF's most modern Rafale fighter aircraft. And it will be her maiden visit to one of the oldest Indian Air Force stations also. This Ambala Air Force Station houses one of the squadrons of the French-built fighter aircraft Rafale, and the Rafale jet is of course considered a 4.5 generation fighter aircraft and is armed with unmatched weapon systems and sensors with multi-role capability. In fact, the Rafale has the capability to strike enemy targets from an unchallenged standoff range of more than 300 kilometers. Also, most importantly and significantly, the Rafale jets are loaded with India-specific modifications, including Israeli helmet-mounted displays, radar warning receivers, low-band jammers, 10-hour flight data recording, infrared search, and tracking system, among others. I repeat that the Rafale jets are loaded with India-specific modifications, including Israeli helmet-mounted displays, radar warning receivers, low-band jammers, 10-hour flight data recording, infrared search, and tracking systems, among other important specialities. The earlier sortie of President Draupadi Murmu in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft was at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam in 2023, and the president was airborne at that time for about 30 minutes, flying over the Brahmaputra and Tezpur Valley with the mighty Himalayas on one side. As we told you, President Murmu is the third president and the second woman president to undertake such a sortie. Prior to her, former presidents like Pratibha Patil and Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam had also flown in the fighter jets. This will be President Murmu's maiden visit to one of the oldest Indian Air Force stations, which houses one of the squadrons of the French-built fighter aircraft Rafale. And as we told you, the Rafale jet is considered a 4.5 generation fighter aircraft and is armed with unmatched weapon system and sensors with multi-role capability. Rafales can fly up to Mach 1.8 speed and fly up to 50,000 feet, and right up on your screens, all set. We can see before the flight President Draupadi Murmu all set and seated in Rafale for this flight. In fact, nearly 6 months after India's Air Force's Rafale had taken Operation Sindoor, now President Draupadi Murmu is taking a sortie in Rafale. This is the French origin jet at Ambala Air Force Station. And the Indian Air Force's Rafale combat aircraft played a key role in Operation Sindoor. This would be the second fighter jet sortie for President Draupadi Murmu, the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces. Manufactured by the French Aerospace, Major Dassault Aviation, Rafale fighter aircraft were formally inducted in the Indian Air Force in September 2020 at the Air Force Station Ambala itself. And the two IF Rafale squadrons are based in Ambala and Hashimara. To remind you, the Rafale jets were used in Operation Sindoor successfully, which was launched on May 7 to destroy several terror infrastructures in territories controlled by Pakistan. And the strikes triggered 4 days of intense clashes that ended with an understanding on stopping the military action. Rashtrapati Bhavan sources also say that President's sorties in fighter jets are a part of her efforts to engage with armed forces as their supreme commander. And in March 2023, President Draupadi Murmu had also visited INS Vikrant in the same role as India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, commissioned in 2022, and interacted with officers and sailors on board of the indigenously built aircraft. In fact, India is planning to induct more Rafale jets for the Indian Air Force in its arsenal in the near future, of which it has already procured 36 jets. And India, in fact, will now soon get 26 more Rafale jets from France for deployment on its aircraft carriers INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya. Dassault Aviation is also planning to set up a maintenance, repair and overall facility for the M88 engines that powers the Rafales. And this facility is expected to be located in Hyderabad and likely to play a key role in the local manufacturing and support infrastructure. Right up on your screens, be getting you live visuals from Ambala Air Force Station. President Draupadi Murmu is all set to take the sortie in a Rafale fighter jet. Earlier, President received the Guard of Honor at the Ambala Air Force Station. And the Ambala Air Base is one of the crucial operational air bases of the Indian Air Force. In September 2020, the fourth generation and most advanced Rafale jets were inducted into the Indian Air Force at Ambala Air Base. And the jets were also used during Operation Sindoor, the military operation carried by India against Pakistan following the Pahalgam terrorist attack. Earlier, in 2023, the President took a sortie in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Tezpur Air Force Station, Assam also. In fact, Rafale is a lethal threat to the enemies and a top choice for the nations worldwide, as Rafale is a twin-jet, 4.5 generation fighter plane able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. Rafale is also capable of air defense, ground attack, anti-ship and nuclear deterrence missions, and can carry a wide range of air-to-air, air-to-ground and anti-ship armaments. In fact, Rafale is also loaded with the Meteor missile, Scalp cruise missile and Mika missile system, which is present in the aircraft itself, making it important from the security point of view. Rafale, in fact, is an extraordinary aircraft as it can fly at a speed of Mach 1.8 per hour and can fly also at an altitude of 50,000 feet. Moreover, this fighter aircraft can carry 9,500 kilograms of bombs and ammunition at a time. And former presidents Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and Pratibha Patil also had undertaken sorties in Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at the Air Force Station, Lohigaon near Pune. Rafale is one of the most advanced and capable warplanes in the world. In fact, Rafale was formally inducted into the Indian Air Force in September 2020. It has a twin-engine 4.5 generation Omni-role fighter jet, and it can operate from both the aircraft carriers and the shore bases. Moreover, Rafale is capable of air defense, ground attack, anti-ship and nuclear deterrence missions. Rafale can also carry a wide range of air-to-air, air-to-ground and anti-ship armaments. And Rafale is also loaded with several special features, like it is loaded with advanced missiles like Meteor, Scalp and Nika also. Rafale is one of the most advanced and capable warplanes, as we told you, as it can fly up to Mach 1.8 per hour and can reach 50,000 feet easily. It can also carry a lot of weight. It can carry about 50,500 kilograms of bombs and ammunition at one go. Rafale is Indian Air Force's lethal air asset, and it is a multi-role fighter aircraft. And we're getting you visuals live from Ambala Air Force Station, where President Murmu is all set to take a sortie in a Rafale fighter jet. Preparations are being made. And for more, we have Nandita Dagar, our correspondent, joining us from there. Well, Nandita, what is the significance of President Draupadi Murmu taking the sortie in a Rafale fighter jet?
Now, Lipakshi, I cannot hear you very clearly, but I just caught the word significance. And you want to know the significance? It is a huge statement of intent, Lipakshi, when the Supreme Commander of our armed forces is embarking and flying on a Rafale. The Rafale was majorly employed during Operation Sindoor, the start of Operation Sindoor. In the first few days, you remember that it pulverized the Pakistani Air Force bases and pulverized the Pakistani terrorist camps. F-16s, UAVs and AWACS were sitting ducks in their hangars, in the Pakistani Air Force hangars. Their runways of Jacobabad, Sargodha were cratered, their runways were cratered. So you know that the Rafale has been very, very successful in decimating the Pakistani side. It is the Rafale which played a huge role in bringing the Pakistanis to their knees and they came begging for a ceasefire because of these machines, men and machines like the men of the Air Force and the machines like this Rafale. Just now the president has the engine of this Rafale has started. The president is about to take off in a few moments from now. The cockpit cover has been covered now. The staircase has been removed. You can just see that the president is all geared up, suited up. She has been given the briefing. Her medical vitals have been tested. An operational briefing about the aircraft, its capabilities, its weapons and sensors. It is a very, very potent platform, Lipakshi, armed with hammer and scalp missiles. These were the missiles which were instrumental in Operation Sindoor, and they were the ones, because they carried out huge skills of Pakistani Air Force runways, hangars, command and control systems at Chaklala, or also known as Noor Khan Air Base. So these are right under the nose of the Pakistani military headquarters, Rawalpindi. So the Air Force, our Air Force has always had an edge over Pakistan, and this time during the first round of Operation Sindoor, the Indian Air Force proved its superiority, in fact its complete superiority over the skies. The Indian Air Force not just had control over the Indian skies, but also the Pakistani skies, because the Pakistanis were bottled up. They could not venture close to the Indian aerospace. They could not fly any assets.
All right, we seem to have lost Nandika out there, but right up on your screens, we're getting you live visuals from the Ambala Air Force Station, where President Draupadi Murmu is all set to take off now from the Ambala Air Force Station in the Rafale jet. Rafale, a lethal threat to the enemies, is now all set to take off with President Draupadi Murmu to take her flight, to take the sortie in Rafale itself. The cockpit has been closed and the staircase has been removed. All the arrangements, all the preparations have been done, and Rafale is all set now to take off from the Air Force Station with President Murmu. President received a guard of honor at the Ambala Air Force Station earlier this morning. And Ambala Air Force is one of the crucial operational air bases of the Indian Air Force. President Draupadi Murmu has also earlier had this experience of taking a sortie, and she took a sortie in Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircrafts earlier also in 2023 at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam, and now at Ambala Air Force Station in Rafale fighter jet. President Murmu is all set to take the sortie. In fact, the Rafale jets were inducted into the Indian Air Force at Ambala Air Base itself in September 2020, and this is the 4th generation and most advanced Rafale jets. The last minute checks being done out there up on your screens, and the mighty Rafale standing all set to take off right now with President Draupadi Murmu. Rafale is a twin-jet, 4.5 generation fighter plane, able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. And we can hear the rumbling sounds of the engine. Rafale is a lethal air asset to Indian Air Force, a multi-role fighter aircraft. Rafale getting clearance out there to take off, and President Draupadi Murmu all set to take the sortie. Rafale is capable of air defense, ground attack, anti-ship and nuclear deterrence missions also, and carry a wide range of air-to-air, air-to-ground and anti-ship armaments also. Rafale is a mighty fighter aircraft and can carry huge amounts of weight also. It can carry 9,500 kilograms of bombs and ammunition at one point of time. And that is why Rafale jets were also used during Operation Sindoor, launched by India in response to the Pahalgam terror attack. And there the jet starts moving, ready to take off, getting all the clearances, all the preparations being made and done. And now the historic flight just about to take off. We can see President Murmu waving out there. I'm sure a lot of excitement building up also there at Ambala Air Force Station itself, as President Draupadi Murmu is all set to take the flight, to take the sortie in Rafale jet right now. Jet doing the rounds, the initial rounds before the takeoff, and the rumbling sounds of the engine are quite evident. President Draupadi Murmu all set inside the aircraft now. And Rafale is a lethal threat to the enemies, and President being the supreme commander of the armed forces, taking this sortie, showing her support to the Indian armed forces. In fact, Rafale is a top choice for the nations worldwide. And it is a twin jet, 4.5 generation fighter plane able to operate from both an aircraft carrier and a shore base. During a last sortie also, the President had written that it was an exhilarating experience to fly in the mighty Sukhoi 30 MKI and expressed pride in India's expanding defence capabilities across land, air and sea. And she had also congratulated the Indian Air Force and the entire team at that time for organising the sortie. The President is flying in a two-seater variant of the aircraft with an Indian Air Force pilot, senior pilot managing the controls. A significant moment right now in her engagement with India's war zone defence capabilities. Rafale fighter aircraft taking off with President Draupadi Murmu for her maiden flight in this aircraft, marking a significant moment, a very special moment in her engagement with India's war zone defence capabilities. From Sukhoi to Rafale now, President Draupadi Murmu to take the skies again with the Indian Air Force, being the supreme commander of the Indian forces. President Murmu, the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces, the third President and the second woman head of the state to take a sortie in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft earlier at the Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam. And today, a sortie in Rafale manufactured by the French aerospace major Dassault Aviation Rafale fighter aircraft were formally inducted into the Indian Air Force in September 2020 at Ambala Air Force Station itself. A day marked in history, with President Draupadi Murmu taking a sortie in the Rafale jet. A very, very special moment. India had used these jets earlier also to launch attacks during Operation Sindoor. And earlier also, Presidents Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and Pratibha Patil had taken sorties in fighter jets. They undertook sorties in a Sukhoi 30 MKI. And this is her maiden flight in Rafale, which is one of the most advanced and capable war planes. As I told you, Rafale was formally inducted into the Indian Air Force in September 2020. Earlier this morning, President received a guard of honor at the Ambala Air Force Station. And Ambala Air Base is one of the most crucial air bases of the Indian Air Force. The fourth generation and most advanced Rafale jets were inducted into the Indian Air Force at Ambala Air Base itself in September 2020. And 2 years back in 2023, the President had taken a sortie in a Sukhoi 30 MKI fighter aircraft at Tezpur Air Force Station in Assam. The first 5 Rafale aircrafts, which had arrived from France on July 27, 2020, were inducted in 17 Squadron, the Golden Arrows. Rafale fighter aircraft, which are manufactured by French aerospace major Dassault Aviation, were formally inducted into the Indian Air Force in September 2020 at the Air Force Station Ambala. And the first 5 Rafale aircrafts were inducted in 17 Squadron, the Golden Arrows. In fact, the Rafale manufacturer, Dassault Aviation, is the front runner for the multi-role fighter aircraft. And the Rafale jets were recently used in Operation Sindoor which was launched on May 7 to destroy the several terror infrastructures in territories controlled by Pakistan. The strikes had in fact triggered 4 days of intense clashes that ended with an understanding on stopping the military actions on the 10th of May. A historic day today when President Draupadi Murmu has taken a sortie in Rafale at Ambala Air Base. Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces and the third President and the second woman head of the state to take this. In fact, she had taken the earlier sortie of Sukhoi 30 MKI, and she became the third president and the second woman to take that sortie itself. In fact, President Draupadi Murmu has created history today because she's become the first woman president of India to fly in the country's most advanced combat aircraft. She was earlier briefed about the Rafale's capabilities and the role in India's air defense also. She was well received at the air base by the senior Indian Air Force officials, President, who is also the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces. And now for more, we have Akshay Dongre joining us. Well, a historic day today, Akshay, President Murmu becoming the first woman to take this sortie.
Well, it is indeed a historic day with President Murmu taking the sortie in Rafale. Earlier, she has already taken a sortie in Sukhoi 30 MKI. That's another, quite crucial fighter jet in India's inventory of the Indian Air Force, and sort of a message that the Supreme Commander of the Indian Armed Forces has confidence in the capabilities of the Indian Air Force and the kind of valor and, bravery that they demonstrated during Operation Sindoor. This is indeed, once again, the sort of trust that our leaders have in our armed forces, and with the sortie that has taken place of President Murmu in Rafale jet is going to once again instill confidence and of our leadership into our armed forces and the kind of inventory that we are operating. So in Ambala, President Murmu have reached in the morning in the entire the suit that she wore before taking a sortie. Also sends out an inspiring signal, inspiration to hundreds and thousands of women who are also aspirational of joining the armed forces, who also are who have aspirations of serving their country and in all wings of the Indian Armed Forces. Now that the country has given even several of women fighter pilots and pilots that are now in fact operating all kind of platforms. So it's a big feat, and with President Murmu there in Ambala, this is coming soon after the Operation Sindoor and the kind of technology and will that has been demonstrated against terror infrastructure inside Pakistan. So it's indeed a big movement for not only our armed forces and the country, but also once again a sign, sort of a message towards women empowerment, the involvement of women in the Indian Armed Forces in protecting our country.
Right, Akshay. In fact, President Draupadi Murmu donned a G-suit and flight helmet before boarding the twin-seater Rafale trainer aircraft. And right up on our screens, we can see the jet has taken off, and now it's actually lost in the skies. Akshay, could you explain what makes the Rafale a standout aircraft in the Indian Air Force's fleet? We've been speaking about its specialities, but you could just tell us again about what makes it so special.
Well, it's a cutting edge technology. It's a great fighter jet, renowned in the entire world now, and sort of the momentum Rafale and Dassault Industries got after India purchased the 36 Rafales early, and now it's also considering buying Rafale M for the Navy. It is also the sort of things that set Rafale apart from all the other fighter jets in its generation is the kind of reliability it provides. It is a twin-engine fighter aircraft that is, supersonic aircraft. It has several of the best, technologies that are there available in the world. It is embedded with one of the best radars in the world. It has great avionics. It has a massive payload capacity. It has a huge range, and it can obviously get refueled by the mid-air refueling aircraft as well. So the operational range of Rafale is unmatched. When you look at the kind of operational range it has, it is next to none. If you just remove the stealth feature from the fifth generation aircraft that are there in the world, only few countries have, then as far as dogfights are concerned and as far as capabilities are concerned, Rafale is next to none.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akshay, for all those details. And that we were watching live from Ambala Air Force Station, where President Murmu took her maiden flight in Rafale jet, the sortie. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.